Good morning, Michael.
Well, good morning, Jenny, the
You
rebel.
look like you were like super deep in thought there. It was like,
Yeah, I was. I was trying to think of a really good nickname for you. You need to. We need to get you a nickname. I called you Rebel, but maybe we need to be an insurgent, or maybe you need to be a revolutionary, or subvert. You're an agitator, Jenny, the agitator, White.
That's okay. I'm good with that. I can be okay with that. Well,
all the big time fighters, all the big time entertainers, they all have a one word, nickname.
So like when I come and I start doing MMA, I'll be like the world's oldest MMA fighter.
Yeah. The agitator. Here comes the agitator.
Jenny, the agitator, White. Oh my gosh, we always end up. So what were we talking about? Why are you calling me the agitator today?
Well, because you just seem to push a lot of buttons, and people like to send you information to push even more buttons.
People do. I know. And it's kind of like people don't necessarily want to push those buttons themselves. But hey, you know what we ought to do? We ought to show, while we're waiting on Karmin, we ought to show a video from our podcast the other day. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay,
found issues with the voter rolls, found some issues with the data. So my whole issue is going around the state and informing people of the anomalies, and they continue to happen, by the way. And just call for investigations and for our officials to investigate what we found. And so far, we've not had any luck with that. Nobody's had any luck with that. What we get is pushback saying that our elections are fine in spite of the issues that we bring. There's no interest really in trying to discover and address the issues that we all bring up specifically.
What's the matter with an investigation? Now let's really think on this. Why couldn't we investigate? You would think that somebody would say, if they're saying our elections are 100% then they would be super happy, wonderfully excited about doing an investigation because it
Yeah.
would prove them right. Am I wrong?
You were
100%.
right.
Yeah, right on. I mean, it doesn't get much more plain and simple than that.
No, I mean, and I think that's the thing that we've got to talk about. And I mean, yeah, I may be an instigator if I'm saying, you know, hey, if things aren't right, we should be able to go to our elected officials and ask them to investigate. I mean, the whole idea behind what, and Carmen's coming on here in a second, she'll agree with me when I say the only job of any elected or appointed official is to protect our liberty.
Yeah.
So if something's going wrong and we need an investigation into whatever that is, elections, whatever, then we should be able to get that investigation with a smile and a okay, because it's only going to prove you right if there's nothing, you know, that you have to worry about. Isn't that what they told us with the Patriot Act? Don't worry, we'll surveil you all the time, but if you're not doing anything wrong, what does it matter?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So okay, we'll go on with our day and we'll add Carmen.
There she
Good
is.
morning, Carmen.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm very excited. There's some good things happening in our nation today.
Tell me.
Have you heard about what's going on at the Texas border?
Oh no, that's nice, but give us an update because I think that's great.
So I'm wearing my hoodie today with my Thomas Jefferson quote. That's it's when tyranny becomes when the people are afraid of the government, that's tyranny, but when the government is afraid of the people, that's liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And there are now 25 states that have jumped on in support of Texas and are sending resources, etc. And I'm pretty excited about that. I've been watching that one pretty close.
Well, you know, I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we're 50 individual states, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and originally the idea was that, and the founders' idea was that we were going to have a small, very small central government. So, as Thomas Jefferson, we'll go with another Thomas Jefferson quote. He said he wanted states to be incubators of ideas, right? So, not one nation. I mean, we always get stuck on that. It's why I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a fan of the Pledge of Allegiance. It's yes, we are under God. We're not one nation. I mean, that's the propaganda that helps us not understand that we're 50 individual states. I don't like that. We're 50 individual states. And if we want to tell the federal government to go whatever, fill in the blank. I caught myself. If we want to do that, we should be able to do that. And what Texas is doing right now is 100% constitutional. They have the right to say, nope, federal government, sorry, you don't have any jurisdiction here on this issue. This is it's in our backyard. We'll take care of it. And I don't think people understand that just like with the Revolutionary War, if you don't stand up to the tyrants, if you don't stand up to the federal government, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to keep being, subverted in everything we do.
Well, that's kind of the point, Jenny, is we've come to this place in society to where we can't support ourselves. We have to have this overwatch by the government because we can't solve our own problems. We can't do our own stuff. We're not sovereign like we used to be. Now all these crises happen. We can't handle the crisis. So the federal government has to come in with their mandates and all this. They just overrule us because we allow it, because that's how we've been educated up to this point, over the last 50, 60 years. It's people say a dumbing down, but basically it's it's stripping it. To me, it's more stripping our constitutional rights, our God-given rights, more than anything. People just have no idea, that a state is independent. All the states are, it's a collection of states. It's a collaboration. It's not, we just rule. We're ruled by the federal government. That's not how it is.
That's right.
Good job there, Michael. I approve of that rant.
It makes me upset. It just makes me so upset because we're so subservient to everything they say and do. They just say it and we just do it. We're not even like, hey, that's not how this place is designed.
Yeah, hopefully this will be the issue that turns that around. So is there anything else in the news, Karmin?
Kevin Stitt is one of those governors that makes me happy. This happened over December during the holiday. He pulled DEI out of higher education. That was a pretty big one.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
Have you read the executive order?
I did, and I thought that that's what had happened, or the funding or something. Go ahead and explain it to me so that I know.
The executive offices cannot use state funding to forward DEI. Now that is true.
So he pulled
executive offices cannot use state money to forward DEI programs. But no, it doesn't touch state or a higher education, all of higher education, nor K-12 education.
I knew that it didn't for sure the K through 12.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I have a copy because I'm working on a blog right now about that very thing, as a matter of fact. And I've got several of his executive orders here right now on on election integrity and also on the DEI. And I found that out when I was going to when I was looking up there's a whole lot of rules that have come before the OSDE recently that are on the OSDE website under the rules. And so I went through all of the rules last weekend and looked at all of them. Mm-hmm. And some of them are fine. Some of them just need some tweaks. Some of them are terrible. I mean, literally not going to do what they say they're going to do at all. And the DEI one, sadly, is exactly that. And I'm trying to see if I can figure out where.
Well, I'll give you a little example, Karmin.
Okay.
And this was last year. There was a LGBTQ flag in a classroom in Edmond. A parent told me about it, so I actually sent in an awareness report with the Department of Education. So they did an entire investigation, took them they did take the flag down pretty quickly in the classroom. But the Department of Education came in and did an investigation for like 6 months and this, and that. Well, they wrote me back here recently, maybe a couple months ago, and they literally said, hey, I understand, this flag was in the classroom, but there's really nothing we can do. And that was their answer. But, the headlines and all the propaganda kind of leading up, from people in the Department of Education saying, yeah, we're going to get rid of all this stuff in the classrooms. And, it's just kind of, it's good to hear.
So I have the executive order, and here's the part that nullifies that. Furthermore, the executive order shall not be construed to apply to institutions of higher education with respect to the following: a policy, practice, procedure, program, class, or activity required for compliance with state or federal laws, rules, or regulations for obtaining or retaining institutional, academic, or discipline-specific accreditation or licensure. See, it pretty much wipes it out right there, because so much of the gross and disgusting licensing and compliance stuff is coming from the federal government. So if you want to get a grant or if you want to do so, then there you go. I mean, that's completely exempted from this DEI order. So that's not going to help anything. Academic course instruction, the academic freedom of individual faculty members to direct the instruction within his or her own course. Well, I have a kid who's in a college class right now. Both of the professors are married to same-sex individuals, and one of the things that they're doing in class right now is a discussion about something that Megan the Stallion said. So not necessarily sure that's going to help that. Scholarly research or creative work by an institution of higher education, students, faculty, or other research personnel, or the dissemination of that research or work. And then I just got something, I was showing it to Michael when we got on this morning, that came from a friend of mine who's a professor, a college professor, and she was showing me a research piece that was going out to everybody on campus, and it was all about LGBTQ, different lifestyles, equity things. So, I mean, that is not going to help any of that nonsense.
Is there still mandatory training for incoming students?
Well, and this says, here's another one. An activity of a student organization registered with or recognized by an institution of higher education. So any of if you've got Hamas running around on, campus doing, that's not going to stop that.
I didn't think that it would stop that. I was thinking that it stopped the the mandatory programs of onboarding freshmen and basically defunded the DEI offices is kind of what I thought it did.
No, it doesn't. That's not the way I read that at all, because it says, it goes on and says, nothing in this executive order may be construed to limit or prohibit institutions of higher education, including executive state agencies supporting those institutions' work, right? So then that exempts the OSDE, which is an executive institution that would support, and then I think it exempts
and which would be where all of those grants and stuff are coming through.
Right. So I don't see how this helps anything. Now it does prevent, if you're working at, let's say you go to work for the agriculture department and they want to use state dollars to train you in DEI, this prohibits that. You can't do that.
Okay.
That you can't do. That's very clear. But as for colleges and schools, no, it's not going to do anything for that.
Can we think of it? Is it a first step, Jenny?
That's what I was hoping.
We open the door. It's a first step. We're going to see how they get around it, and then we can, do something to address these workarounds. Do you think that's a possibility, or is this all just for namesake, and then nothing's going to come? It's going to be, game on as usual.
Okay, well, let's say this. So I've been involved for about 15 years in politics in Oklahoma. So what happens look what happened with the Common Core. They completely wrote the law so that it doesn't matter if you do it or not. There's no teeth in it. It's not right. And never were we able to go back and fix that, right? So you could say theoretically this is a good first step, but I have never seen them come back up and get teeth added to them. That's not something I've seen. So to me, this addresses one thing, which is good, which is you can't go to the Department of Agriculture for a job and make them train you in DEI as an employee. So that's good. But it doesn't do anything for the education. And I literally don't see how they could do that, because so much of the garbage comes in through the federal Department of Education. And these people are bound and determined to get every federal dollar that they can. Ryan Walters came out and said, how much federal dollars that they had taken, because he got dinged for not getting it. So then he comes out and goes, well, we took all these federal dollars. Okay, well, that's great. But then once you take those federal dollars, then none of this stuff applies, because they won't apply it to the federal programs.
Yeah.
So Sorry about that, Karmin. I
Oh
didn't
no,
mean.
that's fine. I would rather be educated. I got to play the unaware citizen for everybody else out there who needed it. So
Well,
no
but it's
worries.
just, I mean, and you know this from looking at stuff. I mean, the problem is that if you don't parse out everything they write, because they write
Right.
it in such a way that if you don't really pay attention to what, you almost have to be an attorney. If you don't really pay attention to the part where they say notwithstanding or whatever, and you don't really hone in on those, you guys, it's very difficult. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not saying everybody should know all of this stuff. I mean, it's taken me 15 years to figure some of this stuff out. But we do have to be very careful when we see a lot of talking and, oh, well, we're doing this and we're doing that. Look immediately at what they've written and then parse through it and really, really pay attention to those buts or the notwithstandings, because
Yeah.
that's where the bad stuff comes in.
Yeah, and it's just kind of funny because I want so bad for us to walk the walk in our state.
Yeah.
And we have a Republican governor and a Republican legislature. And I'm pretty
Yeah.
shrewd, as in discerning when it comes to those things. And I did see that one and I was like, oh, hey, this is pretty nice. So wanting to give the benefit of the doubt in it. And it's just like every time I do, man, there's a corner that you got to turn. And there's another one. So
Well, and
I would
I
rather know than not and live in this false reality, you know. So I really appreciate that.
well, I mean, I hate it for me because it always makes me look like, well, you don't support Ryan Walters, and I'll support the things that are good.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to support the things that aren't good. And you
Let's
can't
not
go
live in a
out and
false
say one
reality.
thing is happening and then do
Yeah.
something else behind closed doors, or, so if I'm going to be the one who's going to play mom and check up on everybody,
The
then I guess
agitator.
that's me.
The agitator.
Well,
That's
and we need everybody in their unique roles that they play, and that is one that is necessary in society. So good job.
all right. Well, no, without further ado, Karmin, let's talk about you and your judges
Yeah.
today.
Okay. I was hoping to have one of the things but I was working till late last night getting it done. But I can give you an audio breakdown by telling you, just
That's
not
great. But
showing
do you
you.
want me to pull up your website? I can pull in your website.
You can go ahead and do that and just pick one of the Supreme Court judges, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to put under it. I have a
Okay.
little one decision analyzed and written out because I've been working with this very small team on a
Yeah.
tool that will help me be able to get these decision analyses out and in a shorter amount of time. So whereas it might have taken months, it'll probably take like maybe a week if I have the ability to just sit down and do it. And I did one complete one within a matter of maybe an hour last night. And I'm just trying to configure a format to put it on the website is all. So I should have the first decision up by Monday, which is
Well,
really
this is just,
exciting.
I mean, people need to understand that what you're doing is a huge endeavor. It's not a 15-minute project. This is a huge endeavor. I don't think anybody has ever done this before. I don't think Ballotpedia even done this.
Not in this kind of a way because it's really neat. I've taken information from websites like Ballotpedia and Open Secrets and government websites and just put it all on one. And one of the really neat things that I think is really neat, just a detail, is categorizing the special interest groups. That was actually pretty challenging. And so when you see the pie chart breakdown of the different industries, that was done manually.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah, I had to look up every individual group.
So like you're talking about the pie chart breakdown on that.
Yes, the special interest industry donations.
Oh, Karmin, that's a ton of
Wow.
work.
It was, and so it ended up being like maybe 50 to 60, and then I had to break it down further so that it didn't inundate the eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can go to the Supreme Court justices,
Okay.
and I'll share what I'm going to do there, and it actually kind of ties in. Some of that ties in what we started the show speaking about.
I love the way that you've got this out. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, didn't even know how our court system was set up.
And that's why I did it. That's really awesome. That it does its job.
Yes,
And
it did.
so what I found in our court system, and my mom was a legal assistant for over 30 years, so I would check in with her on certain things and others in that realm. But what we mostly interface with are in the green boxes.
Okay.
Oklahoma's Workers' Compensation Court of Existing Claims. If I understand correctly, there used to be like an actual court, and then that switched over to they had joined that or something with something else, and now
Yeah,
they're
I
just
believe that's
working on what was in existence at the time and
yeah.
cleaning that out. And then there's the Court of Tax Review, and then you have the 352 municipal courts, not of record. So those are your city ones where they just take care of the city things.
Oh, like if you have a, like in Luther, if you get a ticket, then you would get that adjudicated through our court in
Yeah,
Luther. Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Why do they say not of record though?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay,
And
I'm
I
just
asked my
curious.
mom, and I think she was just saying, well, it's just a matter of like what they handle there.
Okay.
And so then there's the 2 Oklahoma criminal municipal courts, not of record. And those will go up the chain as they're passed along. So then you got the municipal courts go to the district courts, but the criminal courts go straight to the Criminal Court of Appeals, and the district courts can either pass those on appeal if there's an appeal. And then you have the Court of Civil Appeals, and this is interesting because the tax review and the compensation will go straight to the Supreme Court. Then the Supreme Court kicks it to the Court of Civil Appeals. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
And then I
maybe
provide
that is just because they're, weeding out cases, that are easily solvable. So then they have to, I don't know.
Yeah, I think because the Supreme Court can delegate, and I think that is what that function there is indicating.
So
And then
Karmin,
huh?
Karmin, we had on our Rumble chat this morning, we have Stormfather who has told you, Karmin, PM me if you need some web help. I'm local.
Oh, cool.
So you might want to get on our Rumble channel and DM Stormfather 3R.
I'm gonna type that down real quick. Rumble channel.
Yeah, get on our Rumble channel.
Well, and real quick, Jenny,
watching there. What?
I said real quick while Carmen's doing that. I think the not of record on the court side, because when we were involved, we went straight to district court in our case. I think the not of record is more or less, it's just all kind of verbal. You go to court like for a traffic ticket. You don't have all kinds of evidence. You don't produce all kinds of documents to be entered, into court. It's just literally you tell your side, the police officer or law enforcement tells their side, the judge makes a decision. It's not, you're not entering all kinds of evidence and all kinds of stuff. And I think that's what that means.
Yeah, that's kind of how I understood it. What was his name tag?
Hold on, I'm going to put it in our comments section. I'm going to private chat it to you. There you go. So there you go. You can, that's he left a link to his site. So you can get him through there.
Awesome.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. So no, that makes a lot of sense actually, because think about it. If I get caught in Luther speeding, which I haven't yet, thank goodness. Anyway, if I get caught speeding here and I go to our local court to have the ticket adjudicated, and I say, no, I wasn't really going, or this has happened. So if they don't produce a result I like, I can also always go to the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, right? See? And I can get them to hear that, and then they can adjudicate on that. So it's, in a way, I guess it's a good thing, because you've got the bottom ones down here who, which are great big courts, for smaller issues, and then they have to go up to the higher court. So that does make some sense. Okay, so where did you, oops, I'm doing the wrong thing here. Where did you want me to go with next?
You can click on, well, the description that I have there explains kind of the flow or the structure of the court system. And I attribute that to the third branch, which was a publication on OSCN's website explaining it.
Okay.
And then underneath that, I have the Supreme Court justices all listed out, and I put a banner to the side of each one that's coming up for retention, and I'm going to
that's
continue to do that.
good. Good
So
job, Karmin.
you can click on any one of those, and I'll kind of walk you through the structure that I have set up. So you'll get the basic information, and I did add some things. You'll get what counties are in their district, who they're appointed by, and what year. And I put the party of the governor that appointed them. Then I include their retention election, and I also include what they're registered as.
Okay.
How you can contact their office, who their assistant is. I put their hometown, where they receive their bachelor's, where they receive their Juris Doctorate, and if they have any current service, such as Noma Gurek has service at the University of Oklahoma College of Law Board of Visitors. I include that. And then I include previous service. So what I wanted to do in these Supreme Court justices is paint a picture, because they're supposed to be unbiased, nonpartisan. Yeah. However, we all know that judges approach the bench with their worldview. And what is included in that is oftentimes at the federal level is, do they have an original intent approach, or do they have a living document approach? And obviously one is more conservative and one is more progressive. And I would say the first one is the actual constitutional. And the second one is
a living document means that people see that the Constitution, or believe that the Constitution changes with time. So right. It's not an immortal document. It's a mortal document that moves, and you can reinterpret it with the times, which is kind of like saying that you could put the Bible on the same level, right? Doesn't quite work that way. So
right. It's kind of funny, because I do want to sit there for a second, because of what I include in my analysis of this decision I'm going to talk about is it's interesting how, and it's funny how we will read so much of an author or an artist or whatever, and all of the sophisticated intellectual people will often ask, well, what was the writer or the author trying to communicate? So in that world, in the liberal world, they do try to get into intent. However, that's not the case with the Constitution or the Bible. But when you look at the times and the morality and how morality transcends because of what it actually is. It doesn't matter. Like, it is transcendent. And that is really just, the more I was looking into this decision and the interpretations, and that's the key, interpretations. It just really, doing this website can be a very hard thing because of what
Yeah.
I'm looking at, and the
Yeah.
manipulation and the twisting of information, and the images that are created about these people, and how it's so just not real. And this is just another one. So I'll go ahead and go into the one that I've been working on, and it
You want me to?
is it's you can just leave it on this page, and I'll
Oh,
walk you through kind of the layout that I'm gonna do, because I don't have it I don't have it on there just yet.
okay. Well, I'm going to stick this one on here since we hadn't seen her yet. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the first decision that I analyzed is the Oklahoma Call for Reproductive Justice v. Drummond. And I provide a little overview, a key focus, a constitutional context. Then I include the majority conclusion, and I put their names, whether they concur, dissent. And then I have a section on interpretive challenges, at least on this one. And for each individual judge, I will include on their page this decision, a link to this decision, so you can read it in its entirety if you want to. It's about 30 something pages. But I will put on there, if they wrote either a dissent or a concurrence, I will include that on their specific page, so that you can see their words and their writings and their beliefs and make that judgment for yourself.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
But in this decision, the overview, this one in particular is related to reproductive justice in Oklahoma, specifically addressing the implications of a statute affecting, quote, women's rights to terminate a pregnancy. And the key focus is, the main argument revolves around the conflict between the enactment of a certain statute to protect the life of unborn children or preborn babies, fetuses in Oklahoma, and the rights previously afforded to women, particularly the right to terminate a pregnancy to preserve their life. And
Be
the
much handier
constitutional
if they just said kill a baby.
right. And the constitutional context is, the document argues that the statute is not compatible with the Oklahoma Constitution. So this is regarding one of the most recent decisions from one of the most recent bills that really limited abortion. It argues that the statute's not compatible with the Oklahoma Constitution, which is suggested to provide greater rights than the United States Constitution. So we were kind of talking about that earlier. And it underscores the principle that the federal Constitution sets the minimum standard and states can offer more expansive rights. So then they're in the majority's conclusion, which is Cogger, and you have her up there, Winchester, Edmondson, Combs, and Gurrick. They concur with this conclusion. And it's that we hold the Oklahoma Constitution under the provisions of Article 2, Sections 2 and 7, protects the right of a woman to terminate her pregnancy in order to preserve her life.
Okay, so tell me, who concurred with that again, since we have all their pictures here? Who concurred with that?
Cogger, Winchester, Edmondson, Combs, and Gurrick.
Okay, so Gurrick is supposed to be a Republican. And what about Edmondson? He's registered as a Democrat. So far
related to Drew Edmondson.
So far are Republican. So we know that Cogger is a Democrat. Winchester is a Republican. He also concurred with that. And Combs is registered as a Democrat. And so there you go. So you literally had two Republicans agreeing with 3 Democrats.
Yeah. And so in the conclusion that they concur is continuing, having determined the Oklahoma Constitution protects the right of a woman to terminate her pregnancy in order to preserve her life, we hold that, and then it lists out the statute, does not pass strict scrutiny review and is void and unenforceable. And that the other one does not violate this protection as it allows a woman to terminate her pregnancy as defined herein in order to preserve her life. And then they grant the petitioner declaratory relief for one, but deny it for the other, having found that the other is unconstitutional or the one is unconstitutional and therefore unenforceable.
Which one is unenforceable?
The 21 Oklahoma Statute 2021 subsection 861. Wait.
And this is
no. Subsection 1-731.4 is unconstitutional and therefore unenforceable. I would have to go back and explain what that is and pull up the decision, and I can do that in a minute. But what I'm getting at here isn't the technicalities of the specific statute. It is their approach to how they made their decision.
No, and that's a good point. I mean, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. And so since it's unconstitutional and therefore unenforceable, it's unnecessary to address the petitioner's request for injunctive relief and or writ of prohibition. So they denied that. And then Kane, Rowe, Darby, and Kuhn dissent. So here is what I included as the interpretive challenges. And here's where worldview comes into play. And I tried to, like I said, paint that as much in their bios as public information could show. The U.S. Constitution does not explicitly or implicitly express or recognize the right to terminate a pregnancy or reproductive rights as federal rights. Therefore, it is a false interpretation that lends to the claim that the right to life excludes unborn children, preborn babies, or fetuses. Further, it more than guarantees a person's right to life, and to exclude preborn babies and fetuses from being persons ignores original intent and basic morality from which our nation's laws are derived. It's necessary to include the U.S. Constitution in the analysis of the state decision, as certain federal rights contained within preempt any state laws which violate those federally protected rights. As for the Oklahoma Constitution, Article 2, Sections 2 and 7 are cited as the basis, and was the key, are cited as the basis for the interpretation that women have the right to terminate a pregnancy, or in other words, reproductive rights. Article 2, Section 2 states, all persons have the inherent right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of the gains of their own industry. And Section 7 states, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. As discussed previously, a person's right to life is explicitly expressed and recognized in the Constitution of the United States. And as it does not exclude preborn babies or fetuses, nor was it common during which the time the U.S. Constitution was written to exclude unborn or preborn babies or fetuses from personhood, as well as the violation of basic morality in taking such life, these two sections of the Oklahoma Constitution cannot be interpreted to exclude unborn children, preborn babies, fetuses, let alone falsely interpret them as to include the right to terminate a pregnancy or reproductive rights.
But that makes sense. Doesn't that make sense when you hear it?
Yeah. It's like that, and here is the key that everybody needs to understand about the court system. Is they issue decisions, and there is a function for which they can enforce them. There's not really a function for which the Supreme Court can. And so Joe Biden's administration will thumb their nose when they want, and they will disobey, quote unquote, disobey. But the way that our national government is set up is that whole co-equal governing is kind of not entirely true, because what can the Supreme Court really do other than say, we don't think that that's right? But the Supreme Court can be wrong, and where is their checks and balances? They don't really have
exactly.
And so they also have no enforcement. That's the executive branch. The executive branch carries the sword. And that's what we've got to start understanding. And it's like, we waited how long to overturn Roe v. Wade? Till we could finally accept that, oh, something's been done, when all along we could have done something ourselves. Sheriffs could have done something ourselves, because it is based on interpretation. And if you look through the Federalist Papers, which, if you read those, provide it explains the intent of our United States Constitution, and the sole, or the primary, the first line of defense in protecting our Constitution and our rights is citizens' interpretation and enforcement of it. And that is what we don't have. And one of them, I think it was either Hamilton or Madison, talks about how if a law comes out and it's unconstitutional, you don't have to sue or anything like that to get it to change. You just don't follow it.
I'm a proponent.
The citizen is like, we are the baseline of authority, and we say no. But we don't do that. We have so abdicated our authority to this chain of command that isn't even a chain of command. It is an not an outlet, but an avenue of service and protection. And praise the Lord, Texas is finally doing something. And I think that that's great. I hope it stands. I hope that there's nobody's trying to save face. I do think that it's funny that all of these governors are now jumping on. I'm glad. And I also think it's funny now that they're jumping on, because it's like, we could have done something a long time ago.
Yeah, but it just takes the one, honestly. It just takes the one to stand up, and then other people will fall in. But I'm telling you, you go back and you look at history, and only 30% basically of the population, it's been reported, and there have been arguments, but I'm just going to go ahead and use what I've read. About 30% of the population was the one who wanted to go into and did fight the Revolutionary War against Britain. It's always a third. So sadly, there are 2/3 of people who are pretty much either going to be too scared to do anything, just completely disinterested. They could care less one way or another, or just too ignorant to understand what's going on. So, it's a sad thing to say, but it is the way it is. And when you go back through history kind of plays that out.
Yeah.
So we just have to make sure that what we're doing, because what you said, I kind of have to disagree with just slightly. I think we have the National Governors Association, the National Association of State Superintendents. We have all of these national associations, and our elected officials go to these national groups, and they get all the propaganda and talking points, and then come back and vomit it across the state. And that's why everything looks so homogeneous anymore. That's why, well, this state does this, and so we need to do that like that state does, right? It all comes from these national groups. And so these national groups, so the national groups really ruin our elected officials, and then we are either too lazy or disinterested or too ignorant to be able to go and fight back. And we're going to have to quit being lazy and ignorant and fight back. I mean,
Well, and
there's
and
just
that's
no
what
way
I mean
around
when I
it.
say we've abdicated our authority.
Yeah.
That's exact. I mean, you laid it out exactly how I intended it. Is we've given it to these people,
Yeah.
and then they go, and in their circles they decide.
Yeah. Well,
And
and
they're supposed to come to our circles and hear what
That's
we want.
right.
yeah.
That's
Well,
right. Our circles, the National Taxpayer Alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I want to make the point real quick, Karmin, just how important this page really is, because people completely overlook judges. They have no idea as to the history of how these people vote, their politics, and I'll give an example of how much politics play into these people who are supposed to be nonpartisan. They're supposed to be non-biased. And we go back to like our court case in Edmond where we sued and had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So we're looking at these exact same people. Now I can tell you, it was a split decision, and I guarantee you, without me even telling you who the 4 dissenters were, you could tell just by your knowledge of looking this up. But there was 4 dissenters basically that said we sued on the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and 658. Also, the Oklahoma Law 658, which protected these kids from the discrimination. But you've got Gurich, you've got Cogger, you've got Edmondson, and you got Combs, are the 4 people that completely dissent. I mean, it was a clear-cut decision by Judge Andrews, who said, yes, you completely violated the 14th Amendment. You completely, turned non-vaccinated kids into a separate class, and you treated them completely different. Yet you have, and I think it was maybe Gurich who actually wrote a complete dissenting paragraph, supporting her own argument. But it's the same people. Their politics played a complete role in their decision. They did not look at that case unbiasedly in any capacity. But here again, if people know that, if there's a place that they can say, hey, these 4 judges voted against, the kids in Edmond or this or that, or here's their track record, then they'll be voted out in the future. I think it's just so important. I can't thank you enough for putting this together, because people literally have no idea who these judges are, what they've done in the past, decisions that they've made that affect us, and there's no real accountability for them because they're just kind of in the system.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out something else too. So these people right here are appointed by governors. Okay, so that's another important thing to look on about the person. By whom was the person? So who was Gurich appointed by? Look at this. She may be registered as a Republican, but she was appointed by a Democrat. Okay, there's a little dichotomy, if you will, there. And I think the thing that people don't understand is that the governor appoints them, but then it's the people's job to either when you go, I had it in my head and I can't remember, you approve them or don't approve them. What's the term, Karmin? When you go to the voting booth on the
Retention.
voter, it says retain.
Yeah, retain.
So if you're looking at, we're going to be voting, and don't forget, because Karmin has shared this with us, do not forget that we will be voting on Noma Gurich, Yvonne Cogger, and James Edmondson coming up in 2024, right? So don't forget about that. And then when you see your ballot and it says Noma Gurich, retain, do not retain, you put do not retain.
Yeah, 100%.
But see, people don't even understand what that
Yeah,
means.
they don't know.
Retain or don't retain. Retain means you want to keep them. Well, the only way to get rid of them is to say, do not retain. And my argument has been for 15 years, just if you don't know who they are, put don't retain.
Right.
Don't keep people you don't know anything about. Simply don't all you have to do is scratch in that little oval, do not retain, and let the governor sort it out.
Yeah, I want to share some of the things that Yvonne Cogger, I believe she wrote the concurring opinion, and Edmondson and Combs joined in concurring with it. I wanted to pull some of the quotes out. She says, obviously, the framers of the Constitution, the Oklahoma Constitution, took this into account, that that preserving the life of the mother, and I'm not against preserving the life of the mother. I am for saving the baby and the mother.
Yeah.
And when they go to an emergency situation, they don't go in thinking, okay, well, we're going to focus on saving this person, like, because she's an adult, or this person, they look to save everyone. And that is the mindset that I approach this with. So I want to share that, just to set that foundation there.
So we know your worldview.
Yeah. And so it says, obviously, the framers of the Constitution, the Oklahoma Constitution, took this into account when they unambiguously guaranteed the inherent rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that preserving the life of the mother is deeply rooted in Oklahoma law. Then she goes on to say, the law provided that the right to terminate a pregnancy was available to preserve the life of the mother, period. And I don't understand that thinking, in that it's not even an option for the child. And then she goes on to have different sections in this. This right existed even at times when a woman had little or no say about her body. And then she discusses this, like, social history, as though it's a sweeping generalization. Women have had to deal with the threat of legally and socially condoned discrimination and physical violence visited against them for centuries. And I think that that's really interesting, because she's clearly expressing her worldview in this.
Yeah.
And allowing that to come in and influence her decision. However, when the more originalist type come in and make a decision and provide, their worldview in this, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
But when it comes to social justice factors, and I even remember reading John Roberts' opinion when it came to the Obergefell v. Hodges, I think, that brought in the homosexual marriages, where he basically changed the definition of marriage. And so they talk about these things that have withstood the time, or have been allowed for a time, and it's like they flip-flop. The things that have stood for the time, they will change, like marriage, and the things that have been injustice for time, they will now institute into law, like this, the woman's reproductive rights. And she goes on to say, this right existed even at times when a woman had little or no say about her property, even when a woman had little or no say about her ability to vote, her civic participation, or her career. And even at times when a woman had little or no say about her dress. And so I don't know if it was ever in an actual law. And I'm always open to evidence to prove me wrong. But I don't ever recall hearing about a law in my history books in which women were, it was illegal for them to dress a certain way. I know there are social laws, and social things like that. And But it's just like, where?
Well, it's that whole social epidemic that's just taken over. I mean, men dressing up as women, the whole gender, everything. I mean, everything is just so susceptible now to this social, and I'll just say social BS, in my opinion. I mean, what I want to look at is just the facts. What does the Constitution say? Period. I don't need all this case law on top of all this stuff. What rights and grants and what privileges do we have that the Constitution gives us? Period. And it is crazy, but you're 100% right, Karmin. When it comes to these people on the left or the Democratic side, whatever, they're given special privileges with their opinions that we're not allowed to have, and
Right.
it's so backwards.
Yeah, and where she's pulling this from, it's just like, what? That has nothing to do with it when you take it down, and it's like, and I think at the very beginning she mentions something about scriptural too. Let me look at that really quick.
Well, and I don't like the fact that the left has literally coined themselves as the intellectuals. I mean, they did that a long time ago. They're sophisticated, they're intellectual, they're cultured, so they're the authority on everything, and we're just hardworking trying to survive on the other side, and they've just usurped the whole system.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's very similar. The whole notion of interpretation of things, it's, I think, central to the communist agenda.
Yeah.
Because you have to reclassify things, you have to change history in order to keep people from realizing what their history was and following, what they've been doing for years or what has worked the best. So I think it's the reclassification issue that's the biggest thing. And you're right about that too. So the left has coined themselves the thinkers, right?
Yeah.
The brains. And so when we defer to them, to the thinkers, to the brains, then they basically feed us changed doctrine. And then suddenly we don't know what we're talking about, but we're listening to the experts. And
they normalize it.
We've got to get over this listening to experts crap.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
100%.
sorry, but we're our own experts. We really are. And if you can't find stuff on the World Wide Web, then it's because you're too lazy to. I mean, it just is.
All right. And a subject such as this, I think what I'm getting at in sharing these headers of her opinion is she is attributing her decision to sex, to the woman's sex. And that is such like a, what would you call it? A red herring or a scarecrow, something like that, and debate logic or whatever.
It's a straw man.
That's one.
Yeah.
It's such a straw man because when you approach it, you have two lives in the matter, the mother's and the child, when it's in the life of the mother. And you cannot, in looking at them as both lives, there's no way to value one more than the other. There just isn't. Because when you do that, you open the door to be able to do that elsewhere. And people talk about health tribunal, not tribunals, but Sarah Palin mentioned them.
Yeah.
And it does, like, in what scenario, and that's always been a moral dilemma. Do you kill the one to save five, or that they do those in certain philosophy classes or whatever, or ethics classes. But what she is leaning her opinion on is exactly that: sex or gender, and all of the different discriminations and social injustices throughout time, whether it's religious or actual citizen or civics. And it's like that doesn't pertain to the argument, because when you just look at them as lives, that's what they are.
Well, you
And
know,
the
if you
baby
go,
has a right to the baby's life. And if you want to pull in history, like, how many millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of babies have been murdered?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
well, let's go back to original intent. See, if we just went to original intent, it would solve everything.
Well, they
Because you
do,
said
and
it,
that's exactly, it is the right to life.
you said it originally, when you were talking about the 4 justices that actually did rule appropriately. And it was Roe and Kane and was it Kuhn? Is that her name? Kuhn?
Kuhn. I
Kuhn?
pronounce it Kuhn.
At any rate, you were saying when you were talking about the ones that ruled appropriately, and I thought it was fascinating because they did go back to original intent, and you said, look, there wasn't even an issue like this when we created the Constitution. So stop thinking that this document is some kind of a living document and we have to tweak it to make sure that it keeps up with the times, because the reason we wanted an immovable document in the first place was to prevent the times from becoming what they are right now, which is flat out of control, ethically, morally, everything else.
Right.
So you have to go back to original intent. That's the only way. And you go, well, okay. So they said we're entitled to life, liberty, and happiness. That we can't be denied the right to life without due process. And this wasn't really an issue back then. So we can't consider this this is outside of the constitutional realm. That's not something that would fly with original intent. So the only way, Karmin, and the reason why Michael and I are both so excited that you're on with doing this today and talking about this, the only way to get justice back in Oklahoma, in the nation, is to take people like Yvonne Cogger and do
Get 'em
not
out.
Yep.
We got to show.
Retain.
We've got to call them out, show what they've done in the past, and then let the people. It's an easy decision. It's such an easy decision once you have a tool like what Karmin's created to just say, okay, there we go. Click on and James Edmondson. Look at this. Doesn't look like a good fit for us here in Oklahoma.
Right.
Yeah, and I do want to make one other kind of quick point, because here is an example of Kane's dissent. The first paragraph he wrote says, driven most certainly by a commendable kindness of heart, maybe, I threw in the maybe, the majority engages in legal contortions to protect pregnant women who are in medical peril by fashioning Oklahoma constitutional precepts of abortion law that simply do not exist. There is no express or implied right to abortion enshrined in the Oklahoma Constitution. In interpreting our Constitution, this court must guard against the innate human temptation to confuse what is provided in the Oklahoma Constitution with what one wishes were provided. And my point is we talk about nonpartisan, unbiased, blah, 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 blah. However, you have here Kane saying that is nowhere in the Constitution, and those are legal contortions, and that what you've stated to put it in the Constitution because you wish it there, and it's not. And you have 2 people sitting on the bench at polar opposites in a decision like this. You can't tell me that it's not partisan.
Yeah.
Well,
And
now here's something
completely
interesting.
biased.
You got to give it
biased.
You got to give it to Stitt. I mean, Stitt appointed this guy. He is a Republican.
He's made some good. I really like Dustin Rowe too. If you look at his bio, there's some impressive things in there. He was the mayor of his town.
Some people have said that about him before, and I've looked him up. So yeah.
And I want to read real quick, Jenny, because I just pulled up our case here.
I was going to ask, what's the name of your case?
I'll have to send it. I'll have to send it to you.
Please do. I might put that one up here.
Yeah, you should, Carmen. That's a good one for parental rights. It really is.
Oh yeah, because it was Combs who wrote the dissent in our case with Gerge, Cogger, and Edmondson all agreeing. And this wasn't just like a paragraph. This was 8 pages of dissent. And here I'm just going to read the first sentence of his dissent. It says, "I dissent from the majority's judgment. Their judgment vacating the trial court's temporary injunction in favor of the parents, but then granting the declaratory judgment in favor of parents is most irregular." Then he goes on with 8 pages.
Wait. So the declaratory judgment against the parents is irregular.
So violating our 14th Amendment
is regular.
The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment is irregular. I mean, come on. And then he's got 8 pages. Yeah, 8 pages of stuff on on top of it.
And that's these. Don't forget, 3 of those 4 justices that you just named, Michael, are up for retention in 2024. So here you go. Gurich, Cogger, Edmondson, and Combs. 3 of 4 of them are up for retention. So what do we put? Do not retain.
Yeah. That was a major fight for parents' rights, for kids' rights in the schools with the mandates. And it was the first court decision we had was just a no-brainer. So clear, and the decision was just fantastic by Judge Andrews. But then the school district couldn't let it go. So it went all the way to Supreme Court, even appealed it at the Supreme Court, won won all of those. But you still just have these people with their own opinions who are literally just going on with the social dogma of whatever the time is that fits within their party. It's their party's dogma, basically that's making their decisions. It's not based in just the facts of constitutional law.
And to quote Justice Kane again, they confuse what is provided with what one wishes were provided. I mean, that is such a good line.
Yeah.
It Absolutely. And I was going to mention this just about the 14th Amendment is one where you have interpretations all across the spectrum.
Yeah.
And they are all so different.
Yeah.
But
they wouldn't be if you went back to original intent.
Yes, 100%.
And look at the times that the 100%. Constitution was written.
So let's follow real quick just the logic in if we were to do it in the progressive sense. If we were to really open that door, let's follow that logic out. Because we're seeing it in society when it comes to being able to identify as whatever you want, okay? So if it's based on, a person and how they interpret it, well, I can interpret it to whatever I want, right? And then you have then that basically is like, oh, well, the rule of law doesn't exist. And it just goes on. It is tyranny in that sense. And that is where we're headed with activist judges, and they'll read things into it that they want to be in there that are clearly not. I mean, look at what they're doing to Donald Trump. That's through the court system. And what is the recourse? I think that as of right now, it's just hoping that there is a good judge out there who does believe in the rule of law as it was intended. But it's getting harder and harder to find.
It is, but what you're doing here is going to help everybody. So again, please go to Karmin's if you can't find Karmin's website, I'm not sure. It's just KarminGreider.com. That's all it is. KarminGreider.com. It's not hard.
It's simple.
Go to the website, find these out. Now, are you getting the other, because we do vote for Oklahoma District Court. I think we vote for all.
Yes, I will have all of the judges that are in those 4 upper boxes, in the boxes that aren't green. I will have all of those judges on here eventually. I don't have a timeline for that. It's my hope to get the Supreme Court, Court of Criminal Appeals, and district judges before the primary or the general primary or the general.
No, they don't. We don't retain them on
Right.
the primary. It's
That's
just on the
what.
general.
Well, but
Yeah.
are the
Yeah, because there isn't. We don't have a choice. Our only choice is to retain or not retain. So a
yeah
primary, you've got a choice between candidates, right? But we don't have that here. We only have the ones that were already appointed, and we're just deciding to keep them or not keep them.
there
So they
was
won't be on the ballot until the general election.
so there was. I remember because Nikki Kirkpatrick was campaigning and Amy Palumbo was campaigning, and I remember seeing that. And I'm trying to remember if, because they weren't on any of my ballots.
No, you're right. So district judges aren't appointed. They're elected from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
That would make sense as to why.
And I think there is a primary for them.
I think you're exactly right.
So I'm wanting to get, because there's also associate district judges, and I'd like to get them up. But I'm going to put the Supreme Court and those guys up as quickly as I can, because there's not as many of them. But my goal is to get the district judges, at least their bios up, and at least some decisions that they've made, maybe not an analysis of them, by the election time.
Okay, so here's what it says.
Yeah.
Judges of the district courts run in nonpartisan elections after 4-year terms. If more than 2 candidates file for one seat, they will compete in a primary election. If one candidate receives a majority of the votes in the primary election, that candidate is elected and does not need to run in the general election. So for district judges, you definitely need to get those done before the primary, because of the fact that that's our only hope to do that. But for Supreme Court justices, they are appointed by governors, and we just have the opportunity to retain or not retain. Okay. So that's a general election.
So I'm going to finish the Supreme Court, and then I'm going to go by in terms of urgency.
Yeah, I think I would too. Just pick the ones that are
by the primary,
up for
who needs to be up by the primary, and who needs to be up by the general.
Yeah. I agree.
So that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I think that works. All right. Well, we're running out of time because we're already at 1:17. So is there anything else that you can, that's just popping up important?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Now that I have this kind of underway, I'll start getting those coming soons up for the legislators that I've had up there for a few months. I took some significant time off from this.
Good for you.
And
good for you.
And am now getting back into it, and am pretty excited. So
yeah, honestly, it is like, I mean, people don't understand that. I mean, for those of us who really do this and we don't get paid for it, there's not a paycheck in it for us. We just do it because, we feel called to do it and feel that it's important that we do it. It's hard to continue to have the excitement every day that you wake up. You're just like, I mean, I'll end up doing that. I've done that over the years. Like I'll just run at it really hard for like 6 years. And then for like a year, you won't even see me, because you just can't. You have to stop and gather yourself. And, I wish more people understood that. So, we totally get that here, Karmin.
Well, thanks for having me again.
Well, we're excited to have you on regularly.
Yeah, what you're doing is, I think it is so incredibly important. I mean, it is, I know it takes a ton of time on your part, but trailblazing and being the tip of the spear on this deal is incredibly difficult. And I just can't thank you enough and give you enough credit, Karmin, because no one else has done anything like this, especially here. No one wants to do it. They just want to let the good old boy system, keep going the way that it is. And we know it's only getting worse, but all people need to do is be able to click on one of these guys, instead of asking me, hey, Michael, who do we need to vote for? Because I know we all three get those questions, all the time. If they can just say, hey, go to this website, click on the judge and look for yourself. I mean, it's 1,000 times more, better, more informational than I could give anybody.
Yeah. And I'm going to play around with the layout to make it as easy to go to get the simplest amount of information that is necessary for you to make a decision. So it might change over the course of a couple of weeks once I do get it up there, because I don't want people to search through and then make a conclusion. I want to hit something pretty quick, what they decided, and kind of what I think that the reader would want to be able to base that on. And then I'll provide, the backup to all of it, so that if they do want to go more in depth, they can.
Now, and just to be clear, you're just posting their own decisions, their own past history, their own past donors. This isn't like up to your interpretation as to the content of what's here. I mean, this is pretty. You're just basically taking their history and putting it out there in a concise, and easy to look at and follow manner.
And I do, and you'll be able to know, you'll see when I make my explanations or my conclusions or things like that. And so, but I have everything that I'm pulling what I do make when I do make interpretations or connect dots or explain something. What I'm pulling that from is up there, and it's all public. So you can either take what I have to say when I do say it, or not. I'm not putting that in place of anything.
Yeah.
It's
but that's the other part again, where people have to do their own due diligence, because I'm sorry, I'm opinionated, and I'm going to tell you what my opinion is, but I'm also going to give you links directly to the document so that you can read it yourself. And if you don't agree with what I say or what my opinion is or how I've parsed that out, then all you need to do is say, Jenny, I don't quite agree with that one. And that's fine, because that's conversation and that opens things up. But if you don't like what I say, that's fine. Go look at what what I'm pulling my opinion from. Go look at the source document and then say why. This is why you're wrong. That's really the only way that we're going to be able to get anywhere, is if we have discussions, and people are anymore too lazy to look at source documents or even have a discussion, or they're too scared to have a discussion. But she's going to be mad if I disagree. No, disagreement's okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, Karmin, thank you. God love you for doing a yeoman's work here, my friend.
Yeah. One real quick, Karmin, I put in the private chat, I put a link to that case. So that's got the district court decision in there. And then down at the bottom, it's like the second or third link up from the bottom. That's got the Supreme Court decision in there.
Okay, awesome. I'll check that out. That might be one that I put up there, Michael.
Well, I sure would. I mean, parental rights are important. All right. Well, Karmin, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Stay out of the rain. Apparently, it's just going to rain all day. Yay.
It's a wet winter.
I know it has been, but that's good. I'm not really complaining, sort of. When you live on red mud, it's not all that much fun, but I'm glad that it's raining. Yeah. All right, Karmin, thank you again for being with us today. We sure do appreciate you and what you do. And I just can't thank you enough for that. And then we will talk to you again on the next fourth Friday.
Awesome.
Coming up. So let me know what you want to talk about.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Again, I can't get over what an amazing person that woman is, and how hard she works to do all that stuff. I mean, holy cow.
Well, it's got to be done though, Jenny. At some point, we've got to have a system in place where we can go have a trusted, unbiased place for information to quickly see, hey, here's the history of this candidate or this senator or this judge or what. I mean, it's just got to be done. And in today's time, I mean, there's no excuse not to have something like that done. And it should be done, by the state or, by somebody. But obviously that's never going to happen because
honestly, I think that's the reason why I think it's so great that Karmin is doing this, because we don't really need the state to be doing it, because again, the state isn't always our friend, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want that. We want Karmin doing it because she's, I mean, granted, we're all conservatives here, so there is that bias, but
I'd like for Karmin to be getting very fairly compensated for doing what she's doing. That's the whole catch-22 on our side, on the grassroots side, on the conservative side. Everyone wants all that information, but no one ponies up to help, groups like us or Karmin. I mean, yes, there are, and we thank our subscribers and everyone that does help us, but think of the amount of people, Jenny, that read your articles, that talk about rope or this or that, or the amount of people that are going to be going to Karmin's website. I mean, just a small little fraction, $5 here or there makes huge difference.
It really does. I mean, because even though I've always tried to say, all of us here at Rope have tried to say, look, here's what our expenses are if you want us to help us out with the expenses. But none of us get paid. I don't get paid for my time and my expertise for writing something. We just ask for dollars to help us pay for the things that we have to pay for, like our WordPress account and our StreamYard account and, that kind of thing. So there is, and we're very happy that we do get help with that, and that's wonderful. But it would be nice to be able to get paid for doing what other people who actually go to a 9-to-5 job do. So, and that's, getting paid for our time. So hopefully people will throw a little money Karmin's way to help her out. Although she didn't ask, we're asking on her behalf. Okay. So we have something interesting coming up on Wednesday. So we have another of our election integrity specials that's coming up on Wednesday, the 31st, with Amber Evans, who's from Comanche County, and she and her husband found some anomalies in the voter rolls, and we're going to talk to them. But I have been called into a public meeting with the Oklahoma State Election Board at 9:00 on the 31st, and I am required to attend. So I will not be able to be on the call or on the show on Wednesday morning. So what I'm trying to work out right now is that maybe you and I and Amber and her husband could do a recording, and then we'll put it. Great. Yeah, we'll put it on Wednesday. So, I mean, you can still get in touch with us. It's still going to be the same show. We're just going to record it so that we can all be there for the show for you. And then, we'll put it up on Wednesday. And then on the 2nd, which is Friday the 2nd, we're going to have Wendy Montgomery Dial back again. If you'll remember, we had her last Wednesday, and it's such an awesome show. I played a little clip from that at the beginning, which was one of my faves. She's going to talk more about voter data. Yeah. And, we have several things that just need, like we said at the beginning, investigation is not a bad thing. It can only prove you right. Yeah. So there are several things that need investigating outside, just policy and procedure. But how are our voter rolls being done? And we did another little quick, I can probably pull that in really fast for people who who didn't see it before. I can pull it in really quick. This little short that we did the other day that was kind of, is the Oklahoma State Election Board. All you have to do is type in Oklahoma State Election Board in your search bar, and it comes up. So that's not a hard thing to find. Okay, now what do we do now that we're there, Wendy?
Go to the voter portal.
Okay.
Hit login, check that first.
I think you just click on the Oklahoma voter portal there, and you need to just put in your name and date of birth.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
you do.
it.
I want to I can request an absentee ballot, change my name, change my political affiliation. I don't like doing all of this online.
Wendy, as long as someone has your name and your date of birth, they can come into this portal. Is that
exactly? If you have name, date of birth, you can get into the portal. You can get access to the information. You can get someone's voter history. You can change their information. There are all kinds of things that you can do online with people's voting information. There is a study that was done in 2018 where the conclusion was that anything online, like your voter registration, anything like that, is highly susceptible to manipulation, malicious alteration, and anything else.
So what are you telling me? That people can't look me up and find out what my birth date is and log into the voter rolls?
Yes, and that's a problem because just your voter information.
I didn't even have to put in in anything. I didn't have to have a password. I didn't have to have anything. I just logged in with my birth date.
Yes, that's an issue because it asked you, do you want to change this? Do you want to change that? What do you want to do? So anybody can get in and manipulate your information if they have your name and your birthday.
So
well, let me go one on top of that, Jenny. Anyone can go just to the county election board or to the state election website. You can literally download the entire rolls of all the people that are registered voters. In that has your name, has your date of birth, has your address. You know, they have all the. You can go do that to anybody. You can just go download the information, go right down your street, get every single person, put it in there, change whatever. I mean, that's how crazy the system is.
And you know what's sad is I'm replaying that video clip, and you and I are over there just laughing because it's like, how does this happen?
Well, people have no idea. I mean, we have no idea that it's just that easy to change and manipulate and do. I mean, we need a far better system. And I'm so glad you're on that election board as an alternate, you know, at least to have.
Well, for now.
Yeah, for now until you get kicked out. But I know we're getting ready to close up here, but I did want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I brought this up in the past, the term solipsism, which is it's kind of a psychological term. It came out of like the Greek, philosophies with Descartes and all those guys. But anyway, it's literally you can look the definition up. You know, it's all intense, but basically there's two things. There's the truth. There's fact. There's truth. That's unchangeable. The truth is the truth. Then there's what you believe is true in your own mind, in your own thought process. Just because you believe the sun is blue doesn't mean the sun is blue. Just because you believe you're a female doesn't mean if you're a male that you're female. Just because you think a certain way doesn't negate the truth. And that's how we have to look at our government and the Constitution, especially. Just because you believe all these social things have value, that doesn't override our constitutional rights to life and freedom and liberty and what the way that it was designed. And I just think it's so important that, you know, we need to constantly differentiate what people think and believe in their own mind is truth or fact from actual truth and fact. You can't overwrite our God-given, you know, rights and laws.
Yeah. Well, it's what we were talking about original intent, and more people have got to understand what that means. You're not, when you talk about original intent, people say, well, I can't be in James Madison's head. That's not what we're talking about. I mean, for God's sakes, wait, people, come on.
Yeah.
It just means, what were the times like at the times James Madison said blah, whatever that is. That's what it means. And then you take the times and you put that together with what he said, and you don't interpret them based on what we're doing right now. You do them based and interpreted in what they were thinking at their time. And it's like you said before, people don't understand the difference between original intent and a living document. So people, the whole idea with the living document is a very progressive thing, and they've been pushing this out for years and years and years. But most kids now, thanks to propaganda in public education, believe that the Constitution is a living document and that it changes depending upon our times. Well, things are different now.
Uh-oh. Jenny's frozen. All right. Well, unless she comes back on here in the next 5 or 10 seconds, I just want to thank everyone again for just supporting us, our Patreon subscribers. We can't thank you enough. And just everyone else that just sends a check or goes to the website and just donates. I'm telling you, just $5 makes a huge difference to us and for us. And we're out there. We're trying to fight. We're taking the arrows constantly, and we're happy to do that. I'm happy to help any parent in any kind of situation that they have in their school or any other way. If I can help someone do open records requests or anything like that, I'm happy to help and guide or do it in my name. So you're not the one out there taking the arrows. But we'll go ahead and we've got our election. We're going to continue our election integrity. So we're good there. And just thank everybody once again, and we'll see you next Wednesday.